So, we're all set to resume. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 23rd meeting?
So over it.
The questions or comments?
I have a question. On a resolution where we passed the non-union agreement, I think I voted on that, which I abstained. We need to go back and put that in minutes.
What did you say, I'm sorry?
At the last meeting, when we passed the resolution on the non-union agreement, I think Tom Whitmore should have abstained from that vote. Or got all that in minutes.
And I think I've already asked you if I could change my vote, and I looked at the law book and I don't know if there's, I couldn't see where you couldn't do that.
We cannot change your vote.
I'd like to explain why I don't, I'm not in agreement with it, if I could.
You sure can.
All right, this is what I come up with right there, you can pass it on, board members. What I started out with was a base salary of $40,000. And then I got Social Security at 6.2% on that, Medicare 1.45%. And what I had was a person that did payroll. That's what they come up with these figures.
Are there any more papers, I'm sorry?
Here's-
Okay, okay, that's fine, just for appearance.
You want to know them?
If you have more, it's,
Yeah.
no.
So what it boils down to, it comes up to about $247.34 per day if you take off any time that. And we already set a policy with bus drivers that we took away an hour because they weren't working yet. Yet we're going to allow another staff members to basically do the same thing. You're going to get paid for not working. And I just disagree with that. It's just that it costs us too much or don't have the extra money to go with, so that's why I'd like that section of, the rest of the agreement is perfectly all right. Just I think that part should be taken out of it. And the other part is, I think before any of this stuff is ever brought to a committee or to the board, the cost of anything should be brought to us so we know ahead of time what it's going to cost us to implement any of this stuff. That's all I got on that.
Tom, what position are you talking about?
What's that?
What position are you talking about?
Those, that benefit agreement for the non-union employees.
So my question is, for the rest of the board, being the town committee meeting, and didn't feel comfortable with the agreement for whatever reason. You can discuss later what that may be or may not be, but to the point where we was unwilling to sign the agreement, should that have been signed by the three committee members before we ever voted on approving that? That's my question.
Well, since Tom voted yes, and Tom left the meeting, and I prefer that someone else, Rick, you were at the meeting, Becky, you were at the meeting, Kay, you were at the meeting, say what his statement was as he walked out the room.
What was my statement when I walked out of the room? I didn't make any statement.
Before he walked out of the room.
I don't remember making any statement.
You made a statement about how the agreement was a fair agreement.
No, I did not. I did not.
We were unsure whether you were in favor of it or not, and so we asked if you were, and you said yes.
Kay asked you, I asked you, I said, so Tom, you're saying this is a fair agreement, and you said, I think it's fair for everyone. And you were one of the last people to speak, because we were all shocked that you agreed, because you barely spoke the whole meeting. Rick, you were there?
Yeah, you agreed, I don't remember the exact
I
date,
don't know,
so.
I'm used to it.
Well, I guess it's a board decision, we should get the committee back together one more time to clarify any questions that are.
We've already
It's already
approved it, though.
agreed.
We approved it last meeting.
Well, I wonder if that approval was valid, because Tom never signed off on it as a committee member, and that was the whole intent, I think. I'm just asking the question.
The motion you have on the floor is to approve the minutes, and if my understanding is correct, are you challenging Tom Whitmarsh's not abstaining on that motion?
I bring it up that in the past, we've always had to abstain in a situation like this, and we didn't at that last meeting. Should that be noted in the minutes, or should it be changed in the minutes from the last meeting? I'm asking a question, I'm not bringing up a motion.
I think the answer to that is in the Roberts Rules book, which I don't have with me.
Okay.
If you're asking Reggie and Tom to have the minutes amended to reflect Tom not abstaining, you can do that.
Do we, in this situation, are we required to go back and report on that because somebody didn't abstain that should have?
Would it make a difference?
I'm just asking the question. I don't know. No, it would not.
No,
It would not
You said
have.
that before.
Want to make sure that the record is accurate, so when we do it.
I can change the minutes. You can approve these minutes as amended, and I can change them to note that Tom Whitmarsh did not abstain on this matter where he possibly had a conflict of interest.
Should we check the legality of that?
Yes.
Well,
And if we have to table this
Every-
now.
I was just gonna say, table this until the next meeting.
I'd rather see us.
Do it right, we do.
I don't think you can table it for next meeting. I think you'll get your Robert's rules.
I think it's gonna take quite some time to run.
With the minutes from the last meeting, you did approve as a previous meeting?
The term conflict of interest describes the situation in which a school board member, district officer, or employee is in a position to benefit financially from a decision he or she may make on behalf of the district through the exercise of official authority or disposing of public funds. Financial interests that are prohibited by law include interest in a contract with the school district where the school board member, district officer, or employee has the power or may appoint someone who has the power to negotiate, authorize, approve, prepare, make payment, or audit bills and claims under the contract unless otherwise exempt. Interest by a chief fiscal officer, treasurer, and/or his or her deputy or employee in a bank or other financial institution that is used by the school district he or she serves. This has come up before when you've asked me, and I'm not,
I believe if it wasn't an individual person, we're talking about a group
Correct.
contract here,
Tom
so.
would not be allowed to vote on an individual contract this board made with his wife.
Okay.
And this is with a group of people, so.
And Rick is the person who pointed that out to me in the law book the last time this came up on a contract, because I think I've said to you before, you need to abstain, and I think I was wrong.
That was the one time.
But you didn't want to.
But you still have a right to abstain. Okay? You don't have to, but it would look better if it was directly
You
involved.
have the right to abstain
Yeah.
if you feel that it looks as though we're doing something that, but a true conflict of interest is you have power over what's going to happen. So please guide me in what you'd like to do here with this minutes motion.
If what you're saying is 100% accurate, then I'll accept the minutes as written.
board members voting on a collective bargaining agreement of their relatives do not have a prohibited conflict of interest.
I abstain
So, sorry,
of the mail situation because from the personal, I should abstain.
That's actually your profession, and you should have stayed from that, I believe,
Right.
and you did.
I did abstain.
says additionally, there are no prohibited conflict of interest where a board member lives in the same house and splits expenses with a district employee who also serves on the board of a nonprofit foundation that raises money or gives gifts to the school district or school board member.
That's not a problem.
Okay, I stand corrected, thank you, and I accept the minutes.
Thank you, clerk. Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
You have it, good, Jim, Tom.
Ready, Tom? All in favor? Any opposed? These are approved.
Tom, did you vote?
Yeah.
Randy, I don't know if you realize or not, we didn't do public participation.
We have it on there. So now we get time for that?
I'm just saying, because I know you came in late, and I don't, that part's been skipped.
Public participation, I think we have Stacia. Whoever would like to.
She's back here. Yep.
Yes,
I wanted to address this mistake that has come out in the budget again this year of $600,000, I believe it to be. Now, there's no mention in any of the minutes that there is a mistake. I sent an email to Sue, and I did not receive confirmation from her. I did make a phone call and receive confirmation that there was a $600,000 error. Now, last year, we had a $1.2 million error. I have the videos where this board had a discussion, was very upset over this mistake and wanting to know what the assurance was that there was going to be no more mistakes. And obviously, you had a scapegoat for that one because the employee was no longer here. Everyone assumed the mistakes wouldn't happen again, yet here we are, another budget season, another big error. I don't know what is going on up here, and maybe you're investigating this and maybe it's not being done, but I think every one of us would like to know when these errors are going to stop. I mean, we're in financial crisis right now because we're not getting enough state aid. What's going to happen when these errors keep happening? The money is like draining away. Randy, probably if an employee at your company was doing this, they'd be out the door, you know? So my question, my concern is who is going to be held accountable for these mistakes and when are they going to stop? Are we going to keep letting them go from year to year? Is something going to be done to stop these mistakes from happening? Because right now, there's no assurance that it won't happen again next year.
I can start by saying we are, the individual that was drafting the budget last year is no longer in that position. We have a new individual for BOCES working on our budgets. We have and Sue or whoever, correct me if I'm misspeaking, please. We have basically a business manager assistant that does this work for the reports for business manager at BOCES. Is that okay? So we hire BOCES to do this business management for us because it saves us like a number, $60,000 a year to do this. So it's a conscious decision we make to try to save the district money. If we were to hire our own business manager, the salary plus benefits, et cetera, would be probably in excess of $120,000. But it's a fairly high-paying position. I mean, to get a good business manager, it's expensive.
You're talking a quarter of the money that comes up missing every year.
So please, the money is not missing. Okay, so whatever the interpretation is, when the budget was drafted, and we put everything on paper, and we start reviewing, we start getting the initial drafts of the budget in, it is when BOCES is ready to prepare the budget and review that with the administration. That's at the point that this entry log error was found. Okay, so the process that we have, that we said that we'd do from last year, is review the budget in detail, anticipating any potential errors, caught this entry error early in the process, before the budget was ever brought forward, while we were still talking about it. Yes, it was something that we didn't anticipate. We thought we were in better shape than we originally were. But you know, the fact of the matter is, an error was made. We caught it. We're addressing it. It was caught in enough time in the right part of the process where we could react to it. It forced us to look at cuts further and deeper than we wanted to, than we expected we would. Certainly, the budget situation is better than when we were sitting here last year. I think the budget situation is better than we anticipated it would be last year this time, but it's still not favorable for us.
So from what you're saying is different than what I've been interpreting sitting here
Okay.
year after year. Okay, you're saying that the business manager puts together the budget,
Absolutely.
and before it's presented, then the supervisor, which I'm guessing is your superintendent, looks
Well-
it over to find any errors. But from where I'm sitting and where I've been sitting for the last few years,
Mhm.
your two employees work together. It's not one puts it together, they're both putting it together.
Certainly.
So this error, these mistakes are slipping through two people.
Well, last year, you could say that, and you probably would be fairly correct, that it's up to two people. You know, I think the process with BOCES is that Becky drafts the budgets, and she works a lot on the revenue side of the budget. What are we getting for state aid, the state aid formulas, you know, how we're using our reserve funds, et cetera. Sue and her administrative team work on the cost side of it. They work on the budget side of what we're going to spend, what the teachers are going to spend, bus garage needs to spend, what building and grounds needs to spend, what the administration needs to spend, all those costs are the side of our budget. And then they work on how this whole thing mixes together, and that's how we get, if there's a surplus or a delta in the budget. The revenues versus the expenses. That's at the point where they get heavily involved in reviewing the budget. Now, the process, as it should be, which we've had conversations with BOCES, and we've expressed our dissatisfaction that these budgets should be thoroughly reviewed by BOCES. That's what we're paying them for. And any of these errors, these entry errors, except however you want to label them, should be caught by the BOCES team before they're ever presented to the school. If we had a business manager and that was that person's job, we would hold them wholly accountable for that process. Just as we're trying to hold BOCES accountable, and I say this with utmost respect for Becky because I know she's worked very hard on this, but we are questioning our faith in the ability for BOCES to provide the service to us. So the alternative is we spend the money and hire a business manager, which may be something that this board decides is a route we have to take someday. At which point, you know, as we're looking for cost savings, it's kind of counterintuitive. So we're looking at other options, what we can do. But we're cognizant of this. We are as concerned about the budget situations, regardless of if it's $200,000, $600,000, or $1 million delta, as anybody. And we're working very hard, BOCES and the administration, to balance these budgets as best we can. And so we're at an $800,000 delta. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what we're working against. And that's what we've been working on for 6 weeks now. Yes, 4 to 6 weeks.
So basically, at this time, really nothing's being done. You're just kind of,
Well, so it's very difficult. We have to tell BOCES. We had to tell BOCES April 1st, March 29th.
well, your error was found a month ago? Month and a half ago now?
Probably the end of February, whether we're going to retain their services or not. So these are conversations. I mean, we meet twice a month. We have discussions. The the board talked about whether we can realistically, say we said to BOCES, we don't want your services. After this year, you're done. We've got until July, yes, roughly, I think that's what, to find a business manager. We may not be able to do that. You can't, we feel that we have to have some service in place before we can, for example, tell BOCES that we no longer need their service. It's better than no service at all. What happens if we don't have a business manager? I think it's critical to our operations. We are now in the process of deliberating whether, moving forward, that's a service that we retain and exercising our options. That decision hasn't been wholly made. We have time to make it, but we
So
are,
basically, you're gonna have to retain BOCES services for a full another year,
For a full another year.
another budget season.
another budget season.
So who is going to oversee? Are you going to get a different overseer than the one you currently have, who possibly may have a little bit more business background?
I think our only position with BOCES, unfortunately, you buy the service, you don't, you pay for the service, you don't pay for the person. We're going to work with BOCES on making sure that these budgets are accurate, and correct, and massaged, and processed appropriately based on what BOCES explained they would do, review these with their budget folks before they're released to the school, basically, which we don't believe they have done. So we've told BOCES what our expectations are. Now, the whole BOCES situation is very convoluted, and this is just one convoluted piece of it. But we are looking at what our options are. I mean, the board and the administration understands the situation that's put us in the last 2 years. It's not comfortable, and we don't want to be in this situation. So we have to find a solution. I'm not sure what that solution is. We have to find a solution that we can afford. It's not going to cost us money. Right now, it's not necessarily costing us money. It's the delta is $800,000, whether a mistake was made or not. It's still $800,000. We still have to deal with that delta. It doesn't change it. They didn't just misappropriate money. They didn't mess up some funding. They didn't overspend money. Yada yada yada. The delta is the delta. The fact that
You have one mistake, and are you confident that's the only mistake?
at this point, we have to be confident it's the only mistake. The budget's been reviewed by our administrative team here, it's been reviewed by BOCES. They be sure to say that it's an accurate budget. I mean, you're welcome to get into the details of it, and, you know, I mean, it's not an easy process. It's, you know, we rely on the service to do that for us, and they say they're gonna do that. Well, we are at $800,000 delta. I guess you'd have to say 99.9% sure that that's where we are. I mean, we're looking at different funding from the state right now and how that impacts our overall budget and what our revenue side of the budget is and what that means for everything else. But even that is evident by the information in the paper and by the state over the last week and a half. It's not a simple task to figure out what that really means to the school. I mean, there's numbers ranging from, you know, $500,000 for the school to down to $120,000. What the real number is dependent on how it fits into the state aid formulas and how it impacts other things, and what the real number is something that probably no one's talking about. We'll learn more about that tonight. Those are the sorts of things that a person in that position, that not just anybody can just pick up and do. So, all I can say at this point is we recognize our opportunities, and we're talking about how we can best move forward. You know, we have options, and we got to really understand what those options are and decide what's the best option for this district. So, I don't know if anybody wants to add anything. Did I misspeak? Correct me if I misspoke, please.
The error wasn't in the budget document itself, it was in, I didn't have the numbers in front of me when I speak. That was the error. The numbers in the document are always the same. That's what I'm remembering.
So it was misrepresented in one meeting, basically. It wasn't.
It wasn't money we lost, it's money we never had.
Yeah.
The budget was behind $800,000. Unfortunately,
Did I answer your question?
Thank you.
One more?
Hello, thank you for listening to everybody. You might be wondering why I brought my coffee mug with me, a point that I forgot to mention last time. Please correct me if I'm wrong, I wasn't here at the time that this school was built, but I believe that at the time the two schools merged, there had been a drowning in Edwards, and that swayed the community to want a pool here, so that the residents of this community would know how to swim. I brought my coffee mug, which was a gift from the swim team 2 years ago. There are 13 girls on this mug. Of the girls that you see here, 10 of them are currently certified as lifeguards, with 1 enrolled for next year. Those are people that we need in this community. And I'm not sure if any of them would have or would not have taken lifeguarding upon themselves if they hadn't been on the swim team, but I think that that might have had something to do with it. I do have some updates for you folks tonight regarding the numbers that we discussed last time. Some of these are collated, others you'll have to bear with me. So I've got a new proposed, new and reduced swimming budget. Yep, reduced even more. Oh, thank you. And then I've got a couple are not yet. Collated here. Is that enough?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay, so first thing we have here are the coaches' salaries, modified and varsity salaries. I've taken that number from $5,577 and adjusted that to $4,243, with 2 coaches receiving half of the varsity salary and half of the lifeguard pay. The MOA has been approved by the teachers union. You have a copy of that as well.
So it's been approved, it hasn't been signed or ratified or anything like that?
Right, yep, we just need some signatures on there if you folks approve tonight. I would like to request, the MOA has been established. However, I would like to discuss the lifeguard situation for just a moment. The other coach and I are willing to lifeguard for one another during practices, but it would definitely make our lives a lot easier if we had another lifeguard for swim meets. We would have 6 home swim meets. I estimate that costs to be about $120. Swim line budget, originally $1,100. We don't need any equipment next year. That lifeguard salary of $930 has been added to the varsity coach's salary, and I propose that the other coach and I split that evenly. Transportation, I could not find documentation that transportation is reimbursable by the state. However, Carl Normandin has agreed to develop the volleyball schedule coinciding with swimming. He estimates that about 25% of the schedule could match with the volleyball schedule. Half of our meets are away, half are home. So that means that half of our away meets, a quarter of our schedule, or 50% of the away meets could be shared with volleyball on the bus.
Does
So
he confirm that he
effectively-
can do this?
I'm sorry?
Does Carl confirm that he could make this happen?
Yes, he has.
I have a letter from Carl,
Yeah, they do that.
and if you have from Carl, a letter.
I do, yeah, I have the one that was posted on the agenda for this evening between Carl and Ms. Kelly and Mrs. Cobb.
We'll try to create a schedule specifically for Edwards Knox that would attempt to consolidate travel for both girls swimming and volleyball programs. I believe based on the swim schedule, we could have several trips doubled up with the cooperation of a few districts. As soon as I have a draft together, I will share it with Shelley.
The official I had requested money from the Booster Club. The Booster Club has agreed to help us. I attended their meeting on April 2nd. They have agreed to hand over concessions to us. Whatever we make for profit is ours to give to you for our officials' fees. On the back side of this, some notes regarding the MOA, Carl's agreement, our mergers. I also propose that we charge a nominal fee, maybe $50. You guys can determine what that fee would be for anyone merging with us for swimming. I believe that if we have students from low socioeconomic households, that we could help them out through the Booster Club. Some questions for you folks at the bottom of this document. We would like to request a lifeguard just for our home swim meets.
And that is reflected in this.
It is not tallied up there. If you folks cannot supply the funding for that, I believe we will be able to get that through.
Just $120 for the season?
For lifeguard, yeah, because the other coach and I are gonna lifeguard for one another during practices. I estimate the lifeguard's pay rate at $10 per hour, 2 hours per swim meet, 6 home meets, $120. Yep. Second question mark there at the bottom. I would like to ask that when sports are being considered for cuts in the future, if we could get together all the coaches and ask for bare bones. I know a couple years ago, as a teacher, I was asked to only purchase what is absolutely necessary because we were in bad economic times. I would like for that to happen with the coaches as well.
Seems like a reasonable request to me.
I would like your permission, if you agree to reinstate the swim team. I know I'll probably have to wait a little while to hear your verdict on that. But if you do agree to reinstate the swim team, I would like your permission to go ahead with those mergers with Clifton Farm and Harrisville. Again, big question mark, last one at the bottom, 3 question marks precede it. It is my understanding that some items from the pool have been removed from the building project. If the swim team is reinstated? No, the touch pads and starters?
No, there's nothing's been taken off.
Okay,
Just,
good, good. All right,
How many students did you think would come from merging?
I don't have accurate numbers from Harrisville or Clifton County.
Harrisville had one that was really interested, as of last night.
Presently have one from what, Herman?
We have one from Herman, yes. May I ask, where did you hear that?
she's on the board.
Oh, great, great, good. That works. Was it the same name I put on the?
I didn't get a name.
Okay.
I don't have the name either.
Yeah, you think it's the same girl? All right.
I have the minutes from the Booster Club, and it said the first issue was swimming. Tomorrow night's coach has requested $1,272 for boosters to support the swim team since it is possibly being cut from the budget for the next school year. Concerns were expressed regarding funding the school sport as opposed to a tournament or an activity in addition to the sport and setting a precedent. It was agreed that the swim team parents and athletes and coach would raise the money they need. They would run concessions at the 10th grade tournament on April 26th, and they plan to do other fundraisers.
At a previous tournament, the Booster Club tells me that they raised $1,000 in one tournament, just a few months ago. I don't expect that we'll be able to do that this time, but with concessions and other fundraisers, I'm 100% sure we can raise that money. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice job.
Thanks, Chris.
Very good. questions for?
Brady, I do have one other law that we found since it says, are restrictions applicable to the acceptance of gifts on behalf of the school district? It says, yes, the school board may not accept a gift that imposes conditions that are contrary to a law or district policy. This would be the case, for example, if a gift or money for the support of an interscholastic sport required the board to delegate the donor the board's responsibility to determine whether or not to offer such a program. Basically, what it's saying is that they can't pay to make up a program so that we keep it because they're going to pay for it. So you either have to fully support the program.
Okay. Would it be true that if we, I think if we vote on this, we're going to vote for the full cost of the program, if we realize the savings, for the program, we probably have to approve that as full cost basically.
Correct, that's what I'm saying. You can't use their savings.
You can't approve it based on the
You
savings.
can't count on their.
You can't count on their savings.
Donations for the budget.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to accept the warrants on file in the business office?
Second that motion.
Rick? Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Can I have a motion to approve the claims audit report?
Second, Chris.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And I have a motion to approve the following unused snow days pending no other emergency closings prior to the date of May 23rd.
So,
This is May 23rd, as the unused snow day. So, questions or comments?
One quick question, how do you come up with the dates for these, does the teacher go in?
We met, yeah, teachers, I met with the union president, vice president, came up with dates, and the teachers voted between two dates.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Can I have a motion to approve the following private school transportation for 2014, 2015 school year? This is St. Mary's, Swaco.
so,
Second.
Questions or comments?
who's president have kids to go?
Excuse me?
We have students going there now.
Yes, that student in particular.
So it's
We have to do it each year, and they have to have it to us by May 1st.
just one student going.
At this point, April 1st, sorry. That's the only name that they gave us.
Was this something we could transport with a van or
We do it on our trip,
on a region?
our road from Camden and out.
Other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried.